I always believed marriage was about love, trust, and shared effort. That's what I thought when I married Grace 7 years ago. I wasn't perfect, but I was dedicated. I worked hard, paid the bills on time, and always placed her needs before mine, but slowly, things began to shift. It was subtle at first, so subtle that I brushed it off. At the start, it was small changes. Grace stopped greeting me when I walked in, stopped sending me little messages during the day like she once did. I told myself she was just tired, maybe drained from work. But even at home, it felt like I didn't really exist anymore. She barely looked at me or spoke to me. Evenings that used to be full of laughter and long talks turned into her sitting silently on the couch, scrolling on her phone or retreating to bed early. The bond we once had, the closeness we built, seemed to fade away, like a candle blown out by the wind. I tried to be patient. I kept asking her, "Is something wrong?" But her answer was always the same, "I'm fine." Without ever glancing up from her phone, I knew something was broken. And so was our marriage. I started seeing the pattern. If I didn't reach out, nothing moved forward. If I didn't text first, there was no conversation. If I didn't initiate affection, it simply didn't exist. If I didn't organize date nights, they never happened. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, maybe pressure. But deep down, I knew the truth. People give time to what matters. And I wasn't part of that list anymore. Whenever I suggested doing something to reconnect, she had a reason. "I'm exhausted. I've got a headache. Maybe another night." But that night never came. One Friday, I decided to make a change. I left work early, went to the store, and bought everything to prepare her favorite dinner. Pasta with fresh sauce, garlic bread on the side, and a bottle of wine. I set the table, dimmed the lights, and lit a few candles, like I used to when we were first married. I waited, hoping tonight would be different. She walked in around 7, dropped her bag on the chair, and barely glanced at me. When I said hello, "Hey," she mumbled. "Hey." Smiled, trying to keep things warm, but her eyes moved to the table and the food I had worked on for hours. She didn't smile, didn't look touched or happy. "I already ate," she said as she slipped off her shoes. My chest tightened. "You already ate?" I asked softly. "Yeah, I grabbed something with the girls after work," she answered before sinking into the couch. She pulled out her phone like I wasn't even there. I sat across from her, waiting, hoping she'd see the hurt on my face, at least acknowledge the effort. But she didn't. She just kept scrolling, her face lit by the screen, completely unmoved. After a few minutes, I spoke. "Grace," I said. She didn't glance up. "Are we okay?" She sighed like I was wasting her time. "Justin, why do you keep asking that?" "Because we don't talk anymore," I answered. "Because you don't even look at me the way you used to." She rolled her eyes. "I'm just tired. Not everything has to be a problem." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to convince myself she was only tired. But deep down, I knew the truth. She wasn't tired. She was just no longer interested. I kept trying to ignore it, telling myself every couple hits rough patches and that she'd come around. But the truth was, I was living beside a stranger. She wasn't my wife anymore, not the woman I had married. She was simply someone sharing a roof, barely noticing me. I had been reduced from husband to a background figure in her life. Then one night, things finally broke. We had dinner, or rather I did. Grace hardly touched her plate, still glued to her phone. Afterward, I cleaned up alone, tasks we once shared, now just chores. When I walked back into the living room, she was curled on the couch, phone in hand, her blank face glowing in its light. I stood there, watching her, a heavy weight pressing on my chest. Enough. I moved over and sat beside her. Grace. We need to talk. She didn't glance up. About what? About us. About this distance between us. She sighed and finally set her phone down, but there was no anger, no worry. Just boredom. Justin, I don't know what you expect from me. I stared at her, jaw tight. I want my wife back. She scoffed, arms crossed. I haven't gone anywhere. I took a breath, trying to stay calm. Then why does it feel like I'm married to a ghost? We haven't been close in months. You barely touch me, hardly talk to me. You don't even want to be in the same room with me. She rolled her eyes. I told you I'm tired. Can't you just understand that? Tired. I repeated. You're tired every day. That's all I ever hear. But all I see is excuses to avoid me. She shook her head. Oh, so now you finally know how I feel. If I want to, I will. And if I don't, then I won't. Simple as that. And then she said it. What I do with my body is none of your concern. The word struck me like a slap. I couldn't register them at first. What? I whispered. She leaned back into the couch, arms crossed, expression blank. Just because we're married doesn't mean I owe you anything. It felt like something inside me broke. I hadn't been asking for much. Just the smallest effort. I didn't know where to go from here, but I knew everything had shifted. I had been holding on, asking for nothing more than a connection, some grace. But Grace couldn't see it. I wasn't acting out of duty. It was because of love. I wanted closeness with the woman I had chosen. She let out a dry laugh, brushing off my words as dramatic. Not everything has to revolve around you, Justin, she said coldly. In that moment, a heavy silence filled the room, and I knew I was the only one still clinging. That was the moment I let go. I looked at her, the woman I once loved, the woman I built a life with, and all I saw was someone who had left long before this talk. I had spent months begging for her affection, excusing her absence, convincing myself that if I waited, if I worked harder, she'd come back. But now I saw it clearly. She had already left. She was only waiting for me to realize it. Something inside me shifted, like a weight sliding off my chest. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't even sad. I was done. I stood up, and Grace frowned. What does that mean? She asked. I reached for my jacket and slipped it on. It means I finally hear you. Her laugh was sharp, almost mocking. So, what? You're leaving? I didn't raise my voice, didn't make a scene. I simply walked out, and for the first time in years, I felt free. That night, I checked into a hotel. I didn't know where else to go. My hands shook as I handed over my card. At the front desk, my head spun with everything that had happened. I sat on the stiff hotel bed, staring at the wall, waiting for sadness, regret, anger, something. But all I felt was drained. For the first time in years, I wasn't fighting. I thought about texting Grace, expecting her to reach out, to at least pretend to care. But hours passed, then a whole day, then another. Nothing. That's when I knew I had made the right call. She wasn't worried. She wasn't broken. She wasn't even curious where I was. She had grown so used to me chasing after her that she assumed I'd come back. But I wasn't coming back. A week later, I finally got a message. Asterisk, are you really leaving? Over this. Grow up. Asterisk, I stared at the screen, reading it again and again, waiting for a wave of emotion. But there was nothing. That was all the answer I needed. The next day, I filed for divorce. At first, she brushed it off. She thought I was bluffing, trying to scare her, to make a point. But when the papers arrived, reality finally set in. That's when the calls began. The texts, the late-night voicemails, her voice trembling as she pleaded. Justin, please. I didn't mean it. I'll try. We can fix this. Don't throw it away. But she was wrong. I hadn't thrown anything away. She had, long ago. She begged me to change my mind. But I had already given her every chance back when it mattered. Love isn't words. Love is action. And her actions told me exactly where I stood. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was just someone she assumed would always be there. So, I let go. I moved on. Slowly, piece by piece. Some nights were harder. There were times I reached for my phone, tempted to slip back into old habits. But then I remembered her face that night on the couch. The way she said, "My feelings didn't matter. That isn't love. That's what you say when you've already stopped caring." Months later, the divorce was finalized. Signing the papers felt unreal. I thought I'd feel regret, maybe emptiness. But as I slid the papers forward and set the pen down, all I felt was relief. I was free. That chapter was over. I began rebuilding my life. I poured myself into work, spent more time with friends, even picked up hobbies I had left behind in marriage. And then I met Maria. She was everything Grace wasn't. Where Grace was absent, Maria was present. Where Grace was indifferent, Maria made me feel seen. We met by chance, and before I knew it, we were spending more time together. Our talks became dates. Those dates turned into something I hadn't felt in years. Happiness. For the first time in so long, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Then one evening, Grace appeared. It was late, just after 8 p.m., when I heard a knock at my door. I hesitated, thinking maybe a neighbor or a delivery. But when I opened it, there she was. Grace. Her hair was a mess, her eyes swollen and red as if she'd been crying for hours. She looked smaller somehow, like the confidence she once carried had vanished. "Justin," she whispered. Behind me, Maria stood in the living room, her eyes fixed on the door. Grace's gaze darted to her, then back to me, her face twisting with anger. "Who the hell is she?" I exhaled, already drained by the scene. "This is Maria, my girlfriend." Grace's mouth opened, then closed. A bitter laugh slipped out. "Wow," she scoffed, shaking her head. "You really moved on that quickly." "Grace, why are you here?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. She raked a hand through her messy hair, her expression shifting from fury to something softer. "I tried dating," she admitted. "I tried moving on, but nothing lasted. And now I see it. It was always you. It was always supposed to be you." I swallowed, feeling a strange mix of pity and frustration. But no love. That part of me had ended the night she told me my feelings didn't matter. "It's too late, Grace," I said calmly. "I begged you to care when it mattered. I fought for us, and you wouldn't. Now you're here because you're lonely, because dating didn't work out." Her face twisted in anger. "I can't believe you're doing this to me," she snapped. "After everything we've been through." "No, Grace," I said firmly. "After everything I've been through." She stood there, breathing hard, fists tight at her sides. "You think she's different?" Grace scoffed. "She'll leave you too. Just like I did. Just like they all do." But Maria didn't flinch. She simply slid her hand into mine, standing tall at my side. Grace's expression crumbled. She had expected me to cave. She had expected the old Justin, the one who always forgave, always waited, always stayed. But that man no longer existed. "We're done, Grace," I said. "For good. Don't come back here again." She stood, frozen a moment longer, her mouth parted. like she wanted to argue. But without a word, she turned and walked away. I shut the door and locked it behind her. Maria squeezed my hand gently. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I turned to her and, for the first time in years, I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "I really am. And I meant it."